Joining me now from Paris is Emmanuel Todd. He is a historian. He's at the National Institute of Demographic Studies. He's also the author of the best-selling book, After the Empire, an essay on the decomposing American system. I'm pleased to have him on this broadcast from Paris. Welcome. You believe what about America in its historical context and its place today in terms of its political, economic, and military power?
Well, I think people take an exaggerated view of American power. They talk about hyperpuissance, hyperpower, and what I think is...
that was from your former foreign minister.
Yes, but it's gotten to be very popular,
yes,
and very common as an expression. And I think perhaps I'm a sort of a traditional Anglo-Saxon declinist. I've got more traditional views. I think America is still very powerful, militarily speaking, but that there is a tremendous relative economic decline in America, and that I think globally the European economy is getting much more important and a bit frightening for America. And what's more, it's not, what I'm interested in is not so much or simply relative economic power as the new thing, the really new thing, which is the new dependence of America on foreign trade and foreign capital. I mean, what we've witnessed during the 90s, in that period where people were talking about the extraordinary dynamism of the American economy, what actually happened is the emergence of an enormous trade deficit, which went up from $100 billion to $500 billion now, and which implies that every day America needs $1.5 billion influx of foreign capital to sort of keep afloat. I mean, to finance its current deficit. And there's something new and frightening. So I think my basic idea in the book is that what we see, what's very visible, what we have on our TV sets, that is an extraordinary amount of military activity on the part of the US, is really something that tried to compensate for the new kind of economic weakness and the new kind of economic dependence that's typical of America.
You believe, with that view of the economy, that the United States foreign policy and its military excursions, invasion of Iraq, is an effort to conceal its economic weakness?
Oh yes, very much so. I'm not.
So Iraq was not about weapons of mass destruction.
No,
Iraq was
obvious.
not about a despotic regime. It was not about human rights. Mm-hmm. It was not about anything except America's effort to conceal its economic weakness?
It wasn't even about oil, I'll say.
Oil. It wasn't about oil.
No, not even so. I think that it was really an attempt at remaining in a sort of more symbolic or political way at the center of the old world. I think there's I mean, the world economic system, now that we reach a sort of mature stage of globalization, is really strange, because the mass of the population, the mass of the majority of the economic activities are now scattered throughout Eurasia, with the two major poles in Europe, Western Europe, which is, well, it's not Western Europe now, it's the whole of Europe, which is getting more important, and with Japan on the outside. And the theoretical center of the system is in the US, and that's very far from the center of the world. I mean, if you think in sort of geopolitical terms, there's something odd in having the United States, a rather faraway land, controlling or being at the theoretical center of the political and economic system. And there's a sort of symbolic need for America to remain at the center of the old world.
Symbolic need by whom?
Well, for America. I mean, it's really difficult to control such a world, and there's a problem now. I mean, well, I'll say something very traditional. I'm not basically anti-American, and
everybody says that.
Yes, but that was the joke about it.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's a joke to me. I think it's not important. It's meaningless. And what's important is to produce correct analysis of phenomena. It's not what you feel.
But you're saying you're not basically anti-American.
No, and my basic attitude is that America has been, has been extremely useful to the world, and specifically to the ancient world for most of the totality of the 20th century. America's the country we call for rescue when we were supposed to.
That's true.
But that was true. I mean, America was a tremendous help in fighting Nazism, communism, and all that. Yeah. And so it developed a kind of specialization in fighting against totalitarian regimes.
Well, also there was Afghanistan, and also there was Kosovo, and also there was Bosnia, and
so we're moving to less and less important problems. And what I was about to say is that what I was about to say is that the old world needed America. Yeah. And it is about, and this is no longer the way we feel. I mean, the old world is about to achieve some kind of stability without the help of America. And so America now needs pretext to sort of act militarily, someplace in the old world.
In other words, you're saying that the United States is no longer needed, and so therefore, in order to show its power, it launches to exist
at the center of the world.
It engages a war, and then you also attack America for Iraq by saying it doesn't take on a powerful country; it takes on Iraq.
Oh yes, because Iraq is not a rogue state; it is a dwarf state.
Yeah, and so therefore, U.S. is picking weak enemies, not in your judgment, because it's making war. Not for the reasons it states, but because somehow it's just a show. You believe that?
Oh yes, absolutely.
That it had nothing to do with the reasons that were debated in the Security Council, that the reasons that there was argument.
This is exactly what I mean, this is exactly what I think, but I'm talking about a kind of systemic logic. I'm talking about America. I'm not talking about specific persons. It's a sort of a sociological analysis.
What's the difference in specific persons?
I don't know. I can't tell how conscious of this the American administration is. I won't produce judgments on such and such.
I hear what you're saying. You're not saying that George Bush went to war because
it's a systemic logic.
You know, you're saying that George Bush may very well, and Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney went to war for all the reasons they said.
I'm quite sure that Bush thinks oil is very important.
Well, but do you doubt that he thinks it was very important to liberate Iraq?
Absolutely.
Of course he did. He thought it was important.
I don't think so. No, I'm not quite sure. No.
Okay, you're not sure. So you think he did it for cynical reasons?
I'm an historian, and the kind of history I'm doing tries to avoid judging people.
Which is demographic and
it's sort of I study masses and systems, and rather I have no opinion.
Okay. Well, here is what you also believe, if I understand you. Part of it is in this book, soon to be published in the United States. You believe that Germany, to take one example, was prepared to stand against the United States because it thought it was no longer the great power it used to be.
Well, that's exactly what happened. To me, what the most important aspect of the crisis we've just been through, which is, I think, only beginning, is not what happened in Iraq, but the German no. France is not as important as Americans tend to think these days. I mean, I'm sorry, we're in Paris, and now you have a Frenchman telling you that France is not as important. I think Gilles Pin made a great show, and I rather approve of the French attitude. But I mean, the important, as an historian, the major thing is the German no. And
why is that important?
Because I mean, the tradition and the way the true American strategic system was control of the two major industrial powers in the old world, Germany and Japan. I mean, the two countries that were beaten during the Second World War, heavily bombed, and then reconstructed. And the basic assumption, I think, in Europe and in America also was German obedience somehow. And now we've got Germany, entering history again as an independent actor, and from my point of view, on the good side. So it's an entirely new thing, and it is a major step toward European autonomy or independence. Well, as long as Germany was sort of was in a state of submission toward the United States, nothing was possible in Europe.
The thesis is that America is at the apex of its power and the decline has begun. It is the end of the empire, or after the empire.
And it is already a very noisy decline.
And that, in fact, the Iraqi invasion and that war, and that successful military war, and the opposition to it shows to you, that there is the possibility of an anti-Americanism.
Anti-Americanism is it sort of evokes cultural
worldwide
things. I think this must be looked at from a sort of a, I would say, without feeling in some way. It's a question of national interest. It's a question of power. It's not a cultural conflict. It's really a problem of balance of power, military power, economic power, and what I think the most likely occurrence will be the emergence of a multipolar world. I think the Europeans will have to, as I was saying, reach some kind of agreement with the Russians, but that doesn't mean becoming anti-American. It's simply that America is perceived now and is becoming. It's not only a matter of perception, it's not a matter of feeling, but the fact is, the major factor that Europeans have to take into account now is that they used to think of America as I would say a peace-producing nation, as a factor for order and so on, and now America is perceived as a troublemaker. And we've got to find a solution and sort of to obtain from America that sort of becomes peaceful and reasonable again. But it's nothing to do with culture or feeling. There's no judgment. Personally, I feel much closer to Anglo-Saxon culture generally, or American culture more specifically, than to Russian culture. But I would strongly favor an entente with Russia for reasons of balance of power. This is something entirely different, and it has nothing to do with the thing we call anti-Americanism.
Okay. Emmanuel Todd, thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here.